My stepsister mocked my prison visits. She didn't know I was her new landlord. The notification pinged on my phone at 11:47 p.m. Asterisk rent payment declined. Insufficient funds. Tenant, Sarah Chen, Unit 4B, Maple Grove Apartments, asterisk. I stared at the screen for a solid 30 seconds before it clicked. Sarah Chen. My stepsister Madison had taken her husband's name after the wedding I wasn't invited to 3 years ago. The same Madison who stood up at Dad's birthday dinner and loudly asked if I was still visiting my criminal friends in their cages, while the whole family watched me turn red. I pulled up her file on my laptop. The application photo confirmed it, same blonde hair, same smug smile that used to cut me down at every family gathering. She'd listed her previous address as that high-rise downtown, the kind of place she used to brag about on Facebook. Corporate marketing manager at some tech startup, according to her employment verification. Or at least, she was when she signed the lease 6 months ago. The irony was so perfect it almost hurt. Madison Chen, my golden child stepsister who made sure everyone knew she was too good to associate with an ex-con, was now 3 days late on rent for my property. The same woman who whispered to our cousins at Christmas about how embarrassing it was to share a last name with me, even though we never actually shared one, was about to get an eviction notice with my signature on it. I bought the Maple Grove complex 18 months ago, my third acquisition since getting out 5 years ago. It wasn't the fanciest property in my portfolio, but it was solid, middle-class families, young professionals, the kind of tenants who paid on time and didn't cause problems. The kind of respectable life Madison always reminded me I'd never have. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, asterisk hi, this is Sarah Chen from Unit 4B. I know my rent is late. I'm going through some financial difficulties right now and was hoping we could work something out. I've been a good tenant and this is my first time being late. Please call me back. This is really important, asterisk. I almost laughed out loud. The desperation in those words was so different from the ice-cold tone she'd used when she told Dad that having me at family dinners made her uncomfortable because she never knew if I was casing the house. That was 2 Thanksgivings ago, right after I'd gotten my real estate license and started turning my life around. She didn't care about my progress then. I was still just a family embarrassment who'd done 18 months for armed robbery. Another text came through, asterisk please, I really need to talk to someone about this. I lost my job last month and I'm waiting on unemployment to kick in. I can pay, I just need a little more time, asterisk. Lost her job. That explained the downtown apartment to my middle-tier complex transition. Madison's perfect life wasn't so perfect anymore. Part of me wanted to call her right now, let her hear my voice, watch her world implode when she realized the criminal she'd written off now held her housing security in his hands. But I'd learned patience in prison. Good things came to those who planned carefully. I saved her number in my contacts under Madison Chen, Unit 4B, and set my phone aside. Tomorrow, I'd start the standard late payment protocol. Professional. By the books. Let her dig herself deeper into panic mode before she discovered exactly who she was begging for mercy. After all, she'd made me wait years for this moment. She could wait a little longer to find out how the tables had turned. The next morning, I drove past Maple Grove on my way to check another property. Madison's silver Honda, the one she bragged cost more than I made in a year back when I was washing dishes, sat in the parking lot with an expired registration sticker. Even her car was falling apart. I pulled into the management office at 9 a.m. sharp. Patricia, my property manager, was already fielding calls. Morning, Jake. Got 3 maintenance requests and your tenant in 4B has called twice asking to speak with the owner directly. Patricia handed me a stack of messages. She seems pretty frantic. What exactly did she say? Wants to discuss a payment plan. Claims she's never been late before, which is true according to her record. 6 months of on-time payments until now. Patricia pulled up Madison's file. Decent tenant otherwise. No complaints, keeps the place clean. But company policy is company policy. I'd written that policy myself after getting burned by too many sob stories in my first year. 7-day grace period, then eviction proceedings begin. No exceptions. It had saved me thousands in lost rent and legal fees. She mentioned anything about her employment situation? Says she's between jobs but expecting a new position soon. They all say that. Patricia shrugged. You want me to start the paperwork? Not yet. I'll handle this one personally. Patricia raised an eyebrow. I never handled individual tenant issues personally, that's what I paid her for. But I couldn't exactly explain that this was 5 years of karma finally coming full circle. My phone rang as I walked back to my car. Madison's number. Hello, this is Jake Morrison with Morrison Property Management. I kept my voice professionally neutral, though saying my real name gave me a small thrill. She still didn't know. Oh thank God, you called me back. This is Sarah Chen from Unit 4B. I spoke with Patricia this morning but really need to talk to someone with authority to make decisions. Her voice was strained, desperate. So different from the confident tone she'd used when she announced to the family that she was concerned about Jake's influence on the younger cousins. That was right after my nephew Tommy had asked me about my tattoos with genuine curiosity instead of judgment. MS. Chen, I understand you're having some difficulty with this month's rent. Yes, but I can explain everything. I lost my position at TechFlow Solutions 3 weeks ago. Budget cuts, they eliminated my entire department. But I have an interview this Friday with Henderson Marketing that looks very promising, and my unemployment should be approved any day now. TechFlow Solutions. I'd read about their layoffs in the business journal. 60 employees cut, mostly middle management. Madison's perfect corporate world had crumbled just like everything else. I see. And when do you anticipate being able to make the payment? I can give you $500 now, that's half, and the rest by the 15th. I know it's not ideal, but I've been a model tenant. No noise complaints, no damages, always kept the place pristine. This is just temporary bad luck. $500 out of $1,000 rent. She was more broke than I'd been when I got out of prison with $87 and a bus ticket. Ms. Chen, I'll need to review your payment history and discuss this with my team. Can you come to the office tomorrow at 2 p.m.? We can go over your options in person. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for being reasonable about this. You have no idea how much this means to me. Actually, I had a pretty good idea. See you tomorrow, Ms. Chen. Tomorrow, Madison would walk into my office and discover that her fate rested in the hands of the family disappointment she'd spent years trying to erase. I spent the rest of Tuesday fine-tuning my approach. Part of me wanted to go nuclear, have her served with eviction papers the moment she walked in, watch her face crumble when she realized who held her lease. But that would be over too quickly. Madison had made my life hell for years with surgical precision, always knowing exactly where to cut deepest. I owed it to myself to return the favor. At 1:45 p.m. Wednesday, I positioned myself in the office where I could see the parking lot. Madison's Honda pulled in right at 2 p.m., she was nothing if not punctual. Through the window, I watched her check her appearance in the rearview mirror, smoothing down hair that looked like it hadn't seen a professional stylist in weeks. She was wearing a navy business suit that probably cost more than most people's rent, but I could see a small stain on the sleeve and a loose thread on the hem. Even her armor was falling apart. Patricia buzzed me when Madison entered the lobby. Your 2 p.m. is here. Send her to conference room B. I'll be right there. I gave it 5 minutes, let her sit and stew in her anxiety. When I finally opened the conference room door, Madison was hunched over her phone, frantically typing. She looked up with a practiced smile that died halfway to her eyes when she saw me. Madison. I closed the door behind me and sat down across from her. It's been a while. The color drained from her face so completely I thought she might pass out. Her mouth opened and closed twice before any sound came out. Jake. What are you doing here? I work here. Own the place, actually. I set her file on the table between us, letting my fingers drum once against the folder. So you need to discuss a payment arrangement for Unit 4B. She stared at the file like it was a snake about to strike. This is your Morrison Property Management. Guilty as charged. Though I guess we both know I've been guilty of worse things, right? Isn't that what you told everyone at Dad's retirement party? That I'd probably end up back in prison within a year. Madison's hands were visibly shaking now. Jake, look, I know things between us have been complicated. Complicated. I opened her file and pretended to study it. Is that what we're calling it? Here I thought you just considered me an embarrassment to the family. What was it you said to Aunt Carol? That Dad should have cut his losses when I got arrested. I never said that. You did. Christmas 2019. I was in the kitchen getting more wine when you told her that Dad was too loyal for his own good, enabling my destructive patterns by maintaining a relationship with me. I looked up from the file. Want me to keep going? Because I've got 5 years worth of your greatest hits memorized. She was crying now, not the pretty, composed tears she'd shed at her wedding, but ugly, desperate sobs that shook her whole body. Please, Jake. I know I wasn't. I wasn't good to you. But I'm losing everything. My job, my savings, Richard and I are separated because of the stress. This apartment is all I have left. That stopped me cold. Richard left you. He moved out last month. Said he couldn't handle the financial pressure and my emotional instability. She wiped her nose with a tissue from her purse. Turns out having a husband in tech doesn't guarantee anything when his startup tanks too. So Golden Boy Richard had bailed when things got rough. The same guy who'd smugly shaken my hand at their engagement party while Madison told him about my colorful past. Apparently his love came with terms and conditions. I can pay you $600 by Friday, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Please don't evict me. I'll figure out the rest somehow. $600. She'd managed to scrape together another 100 since yesterday, probably selling something valuable. The desperation in her voice was real, this wasn't manipulation, it was genuine terror. I had her exactly where I'd dreamed of having her for years. Broken, humiliated, completely at my mercy. So why did victory taste so bitter? I leaned back in my chair, watching Madison fall apart across from me. 6 months ago, this moment would have felt like Christmas morning. The woman who made sure I knew I didn't belong anywhere near the family was now begging me not to destroy her life. $600 by Friday, I repeated slowly. That still leaves you $400 short, plus late fees. We're talking about a pattern here, Madison. What happens next month? And the month after that? I'll have a job by then. The Henderson interview went really well, and there are 2 other companies interested in my portfolio. Her voice cracked on the word portfolio. I just need someone to believe in me for once. The irony wasn't lost on me. Madison Chen, asking someone to believe in her. The same woman who'd looked Dad dead in the eye at my parole hearing and said, I think you're setting yourself up for disappointment if you expect Jake to change. You know what's funny? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. I actually know Henderson marketing. Tom Henderson owes me a favor, I helped him find office space for his expansion last year. Madison's face went white. What are you saying? I'm saying that interview you think went so well. 1 phone call from me could make sure you never hear back from them. I set the phone on the table between us. Same with pretty much every marketing firm in the city. I've got connections all over town now. You wouldn't. But her voice suggested she knew I absolutely would. Wouldn't I? Let's see, what was it you told HR at Dad's company when they were considering hiring ex-felons for their warehouse? Something about how people like me don't really change, we just get better at hiding what we are. Madison buried her face in her hands. How do you even know about that? Dad's boss mentioned it to him. Figured Dad should know his stepdaughter was actively sabotaging rehabilitation programs. I'd never told Dad that story, it would have destroyed him to know Madison was working against everything he believed about second chances. Cost 3 guys jobs they desperately needed. I was trying to protect the company. You were protecting your image. Couldn't have people knowing you were related to someone with a record. I stood up and walked to the window overlooking the parking lot. Even indirectly related. We were never actually family, right? Just 2 people who happened to have parents who got married. It wasn't like that. I turned back to her. Then what was it like, Madison? Explain to me how telling everyone at Dad's birthday party that I made you uncomfortable was somehow protective. How suggesting I shouldn't be around the younger cousins was anything other than cruelty. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I was scared of you. Scared of me? I never threatened you. Never even raised my voice to you. Not physically scared. Scared of what you represented. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. You were proof that everything could fall apart. That good families could have bad things happen. That success and stability weren't guaranteed. I felt something shift in my chest, anger mixing with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. So you decided to make me the villain in your story. I thought if I could distance myself from you, distance our family from what you did, we'd be safer somehow. Like your mistakes couldn't touch us if we just pushed you far enough away. The conference room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and Madison's quiet sniffling. 5 years of rage had been building to this moment, and now that I was here, I felt empty. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia, Jake, you've got a 3 p.m. with the contractors about the Elm Street property. Should I reschedule? I need to make a decision about your lease, I said finally. Today. Madison nodded, not trusting her voice. Give me 24 hours. I'll call you tomorrow with my answer. She gathered her purse with shaking hands. Thank you for listening. As she reached the door, I called out, Madison. She turned back, hope flickering in her eyes. That thing you were scared of. Everything falling apart. It already happened to you. And pushing me away didn't stop it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Madison's words kept echoing in my head. I was scared of what you represented. I'd spent 5 years imagining this confrontation, but I'd never considered that her cruelty might have come from fear rather than pure malice. At 3 a.m., I found myself reviewing her tenant file again. 6 months of perfect payments until now. No complaints from neighbors. She'd even reported a water leak in 2C that could have caused serious damage if left unchecked. Whatever else Madison was, she'd been a responsible tenant. My laptop was still open when my phone rang at 7:15 a.m. Dad's number. Jake. Sorry to call so early. I wanted to catch you before work. Hey, Dad. What's up? I heard through the family grapevine that Madison and Richard separated. Thought you should know since, well, I know things have been strained between you two, but she's struggling right now. I sat up straighter. How much do you know about her situation? Just that she lost her job and Richard moved out. Your stepmother's worried sick, apparently Madison's too proud to ask for help, but Carol thinks she's in real financial trouble. Dad sighed. I was wondering if you might reach out to her. I know it's a lot to ask given your history, but you've done so well for yourself. Maybe you could offer some guidance about getting back on your feet. The irony was suffocating. Dad, there's something you should know. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, he interrupted. The way our family treated you after prison. I should have done more to protect you from some of the comments. Madison was young and scared, but that's no excuse for how she acted. Young and scared. She'd been 25 when I got out, hardly a child. But Dad always made excuses for his stepdaughter. She's 30 now, Dad. At some point, people have to own their choices. I know. But people can change, right? You're living proof of that. Maybe this rough patch will help Madison develop some empathy. He paused. Will you at least think about it? After we hung up, I stared at my phone for 10 minutes. Dad still didn't know I was Madison's landlord. If he found out I was holding her housing security while she begged for mercy, he'd see me as the villain, the ex-con's son who couldn't let go of old grudges. At 9 a.m., Patricia knocked on my office door. Jake, your tenant from yesterday. She's here again. Says she needs to speak with you urgently. Through my office window, I could see Madison pacing in the lobby. She was wearing the same suit from yesterday, wrinkled now like she'd slept in it. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she kept checking her phone obsessively. Send her to conference room B. Give me 5 minutes. When I walked in, Madison was sitting ramrod straight, hands folded on the table. She'd clearly been crying again, but she tried to cover it with makeup that didn't quite match her skin tone. Thank you for seeing me, she said formally. I know you said 24 hours, but something's happened. I took the seat across from her. I'm listening. My car was repossessed this morning. I was 3 payments behind, and they came at 6 a.m. Her voice was steady, but I could see her hands trembling. I had to take 2 buses to get here. The silver Honda was gone from the parking lot, I should have noticed. There's more, she continued. The Henderson position fell through. They called an hour ago to say they're going in a different direction. I don't know if that's because. She looked directly at me, or if it's just more bad luck. I hadn't made any calls. Henderson's decision was their own. And my unemployment claim was denied. Apparently there's some dispute about whether my termination was performance-related or budget cuts. Madison's composure finally cracked. I have $237 in my checking account. That's it. That's everything. $237. Less than I'd had when I got out of prison. I can clean houses, she said desperately. Babysit, walk dogs, whatever it takes. I'm not too proud anymore. I just need time to find something, anything that pays. The woman who used to brag about her 6-figure salary was offering to clean toilets to keep her apartment. Madison, I said quietly, why didn't you ask Dad for help? She laughed bitterly. With what money? He's retired, living on a fixed income. And after everything I said about you, how could I explain that I need the charity I claimed you didn't deserve? That hit harder than I expected. Madison had painted herself into a corner with her own judgment. Please, she whispered. I know I don't deserve your mercy. I know I was cruel and small-minded in everything you probably think about me. But I'm asking anyway. Don't let me become homeless. I'm begging you. The golden child was begging the family disappointment for scraps. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt sick. I stared at Madison for 30 seconds that felt like hours. Her makeup was streaked, her designer suit wrinkled beyond repair, and she was literally begging me, the family criminal, to save her from the streets. I need to ask you something, I said finally. And I want the truth. She nodded quickly, too quickly. That night at Dad's birthday dinner when you asked about my criminal friends in their cages, did you know Tommy was listening? Madison's face went pale. What? My nephew Tommy. He was 12, standing right behind your chair when you said it. He asked Dad later why Uncle Jake's friends lived in cages like animals. I leaned forward. Dad spent 2 hours explaining prison to a 12-year-old because you couldn't keep your mouth shut at a family dinner. I didn't see him there. That's not what I asked. I asked if you knew he was listening when you decided to humiliate me in front of the whole family. Madison's shoulders sagged. Yes. I knew he was there. The admission hit me like a physical blow. It was one thing to attack me directly, but involving a kid who looked up to me. That was calculated cruelty. Jesus Christ, Madison. I was angry, she burst out. You want the truth? Fine. I was furious that everyone was celebrating you for getting your real estate license like it was some huge accomplishment. You robbed people, Jake. You held a gun to someone's grandmother and took her purse, and everyone was acting like getting a basic professional license made you a hero. I was 22 and stupid and desperate. And I was supposed to just forget that. Pretend it never happened. Her voice rose. Do you know what it was like having coworkers Google our family name and find news articles about your arrest? Having people ask if I was related to the Jake Morrison who robbed 3 convenience stores. So you decided to make sure I stayed buried. I decided to protect myself. She slammed her hand on the table. I worked my ass off to build a career, and every family gathering felt like a minefield because someone might mention your inspiring comeback story, and I'd have to smile and nod while inside I'm screaming that none of you understood what it cost me to be associated with you. The raw honesty was jarring. For the first time in 5 years, Madison wasn't performing, she was just angry and hurt and desperate. You know what the real kick in the teeth is? I said. I actually understood why you kept your distance at first. Prison changes people, and you didn't know who I'd become. But you never gave me a chance to prove I was different. You decided who I was and spent years making sure everyone else saw me the same way. Because I couldn't afford to be wrong. Madison's voice cracked. If you screwed up again, if you got arrested or violated parole or did anything that made the family look bad, I'd be guilty by association. My reputation would be collateral damage in your next mistake. I haven't made a next mistake. I know that now. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. Believe me, watching my perfect life fall apart while you've built an actual business empire has been a real education in irony. My phone buzzed with a text from my property manager at the Elm Street complex. * Jake, we've got a situation. Tenant in 2A is 3 months behind and threatening other residents. Need you here ASAP. *. Perfect timing. Another problem tenant, another difficult decision. But unlike Madison, this one wouldn't come with 5 years of family baggage attached. I have to go handle an emergency, I said, standing up. But first, I need to know something else. If our situations were reversed right now, if I was the one begging you for mercy, what would you do? Madison looked at me for a long moment, tears still streaming down her face. I'd probably evict you, she whispered. The old me would have evicted you without a second thought. At least she was honest. I'll call you tonight with my decision. As I reached the door, she called out, Jake. For what it's worth, I was wrong about you. You became everything I was too scared to believe you could become. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever gotten from her. It still might not be enough. I spent the rest of Wednesday dealing with the Elm Street situation, a deadbeat tenant who'd been subletting to drug dealers and intimidating the elderly woman next door. By the time I finished the eviction paperwork and coordinated with police, it was nearly 9 p.m. The contrast wasn't lost on me. I just kicked out a genuine problem tenant without blinking, while agonizing over what to do about Madison. My phone had been buzzing all day with missed calls from family members. Apparently word had gotten out about Madison's situation. 3 voicemails from my stepmother Carol, 2 from my cousin Rebecca, and 1 from my nephew Tommy, now 17 and apparently Madison's newly appointed advocate. Tommy's message hit the hardest. Uncle Jake, I heard Madison's going through a rough time. I know you guys don't get along, but she helped me with my college application essays last month. Maybe you could give her some business advice. You're like the most successful person in our family now. The kid had no idea I held his precious Madison's fate in my hands. I was sitting in my home office at 10:15 p.m., staring at Madison's file for the 100th time, when my phone rang. Patricia's number. Jake, sorry to call so late. We've got a problem with your 4B tenant. My stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Noise complaints from 3 different units. Apparently she's been crying loudly for hours, and Mrs. Rodriguez in 4A says it sounds like she's having some kind of breakdown. Should I call wellness check? Jesus. Madison was falling apart so loudly that neighbors were complaining. I'll handle it, I said. Don't call anyone yet. 20 minutes later, I was standing outside Unit 4B listening to muffled sobbing through the door. The crying was punctuated by what sounded like objects being thrown, nothing heavy, maybe books or papers. When I knocked, the noise stopped immediately. Madison. It's Jake. Open the door. Silence for 30 seconds, then footsteps. The door opened to reveal Madison in yoga pants and an oversized t-shirt that looked like it hadn't been washed in days. Her eyes were swollen nearly shut from crying, and there were tissues scattered across the floor behind her. Did you come to serve me papers? She asked hoarsely. I looked past her into the apartment. It was chaos, papers everywhere, empty wine bottles on the counter, takeout containers stacked by the sink. The Madison I knew was obsessively clean. This looked like someone had given up entirely. I came because you're disturbing other tenants. Right. Add it to my list of failures. She turned and walked back into the living room, leaving the door open. I followed her inside and immediately regretted it. Photo albums were spread across the coffee table, family pictures going back years. Wedding photos of her and Richard, graduation shots, holiday gatherings. In several of them, I could see myself in the background, always slightly separate from the main group. Always the outsider. I was looking for evidence, Madison said, collapsing onto her couch. Something to prove I wasn't always a complete bitch to you. But you know what I found? She held up a photo from Dad's retirement party, the one where she'd announced her concerns about my influence on the younger cousins. In the picture, she was laughing at something Richard whispered in her ear while I stood alone by the dessert table, looking like I'd rather be anywhere else. I found proof that I was exactly as bad as you remember. Maybe worse. She threw the photo back onto the pile. 23 family gatherings over 5 years, and in every single picture, I'm either ignoring you completely or actively excluding you from conversations. I picked up another photo, Christmas 2020. The family was opening presents, and there I was again, sitting slightly apart, watching everyone else's joy like an outsider looking through a window. Madison. I poisoned them against you, she continued, her voice flat with exhaustion. Not dramatically, not with big confrontations. Just little comments here and there. Jake seems tense tonight. Maybe we shouldn't discuss vacation plans around him. I worry about his anger issues. I don't have anger issues. I know that now. But I planted seeds of doubt everywhere I could. She looked up at me with eyes so defeated I almost didn't recognize her. I turned you into the family charity case instead of just letting you be my stepbrother. The admission should have felt like vindication. Instead, it felt like watching someone dissect their own cruelty with surgical precision. Why are you telling me this? Because tomorrow you're going to destroy my life, and I wanted you to know that I understand why. That I know I earned this. Madison pulled her knees to her chest, making herself as small as possible. I spent 5 years making sure you knew you didn't belong. Now you get to return the favor. She was wrong about one thing, I'd already made my decision. I just wasn't sure she was going to like it. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to her contact. I'm calling you right now with my decision. Madison looked confused as her phone started ringing on the coffee table. She answered it hesitantly, even though I was sitting 3 feet away. Madison, this is Jake Morrison from Morrison Property Management regarding your lease. She played along, straightening up slightly. Yes. After careful consideration of your circumstances and tenant history, I'm prepared to offer you the following arrangement. I stood up and walked to her kitchen window, looking out at the parking lot where her repossessed car used to sit. You can stay in Unit 4B under a modified lease agreement. Hope flickered across her face for the first time in days. The terms are non-negotiable, I continued in my most professional voice. Your rent is reduced to $600 per month for the next 6 months. In exchange, you'll provide property management services for this complex, showing units, basic maintenance coordination, tenant communication. 20 hours per week minimum. Madison's mouth fell open. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a way to earn your keep while you get back on your feet. I ended the call and sat back down. Patricia's been asking for an assistant anyway, and you've got management experience. The work isn't glamorous, you'll be dealing with clogged toilets and noise complaints, but it pays enough to cover your reduced rent plus groceries. I don't understand. Why would you help me after everything I did? I picked up the photo from Dad's retirement party again, studying my own face in the background. I looked lost, like I was trying to figure out where I belonged in my own family. Because I remember what it felt like to have nowhere to go, I said finally. When I got out of prison, I had $87 and a bus ticket. Dad let me sleep on his couch for 3 months while I found work, and that safety net saved my life. But you don't have that option, do you? You can't ask Dad for help because you'd have to admit you're in the same position as the ex-con you spent years calling a lost cause. Madison started crying again, but quietly this time. You're giving me what I never gave you. A second chance. I'm giving you what everyone deserves, an opportunity to prove who you really are when everything else gets stripped away. I gathered up the scattered photos and stacked them neatly on her coffee table. But there's a condition. She tensed. What kind of condition? Next family gathering, Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever comes first, you're going to tell everyone the truth. About your job, about Richard leaving, about me helping you. No sanitized version, no spin. Just the facts. Jake, that will humiliate me in front of everyone. Good. Maybe a little humiliation will teach you some empathy. I stood up to leave. You spent 5 years making sure everyone knew I was broken. Now they get to know you're human too. I was halfway to the door when she called out, what if I mess this up? What if I can't handle the work or I fall behind again? Then you'll get evicted like any other tenant who can't meet their obligations. I turned back to face her. This isn't charity, Madison. It's a business arrangement with someone who happens to share a complicated family history. Don't mistake it for forgiveness. Her face fell slightly. So you'll never forgive me? Ask me again in 6 months. After you've had time to show me who you are when you're not looking down on everyone from your high horse. As I drove home, my phone rang. Dad's number again. Jake. I just got off the phone with Madison. She's crying so hard I can barely understand her, but she says you offered her a job. He sounded stunned. After everything that's happened between you two. She needed help, and I needed an assistant. It's business, Dad. Son, this is incredible. You have no idea what this means to our family. But I did know. I was either going to be the hero who saved the golden child, or the villain who watched her fail on my property. There wouldn't be much middle ground. We'll see how it works out, I said. People have to earn their happy endings. The real test was just beginning. The first week of our arrangement, Madison showed up to work every day looking like she was attending a funeral. She traded her designer suits for practical clothes that still somehow looked expensive, the kind of casual outfit that costs more than most people's rent. But she did the work without complaint, even when Mrs. Rodriguez in 4A called her at 6 a.m. about a leaky faucet and treated her like hired help. Patricia pulled me aside on Thursday afternoon. Your new assistant is interesting. Very thorough, almost obsessively so. But the tenants are complaining that she's too formal. Mrs. Kim said talking to her feels like being interrogated by a robot. I found Madison in the office supply closet, reorganizing boxes of printer paper by date and size. Everything had to be perfect, her way of maintaining control when her entire world had been flipped upside down. You don't have to alphabetize the maintenance requests, I said. She looked up, startled. I was just trying to create a better filing system. Patricia mentioned some invoices went missing last month. Madison, this is property management, not corporate consulting. Sometimes good enough is actually good enough. Her face flushed. I'm sorry. I know I'm probably doing everything wrong. I've never had a job where I actually had to. She stopped herself. Had to what? Had to worry about being fired for incompetence. She closed the supply closet door and faced me directly. At TechFlow, I could coast for weeks on my reputation. People assumed I knew what I was doing because I'd been successful for so long. Here, every mistake is obvious. It was the most honest thing she'd said since this whole arrangement started. Friday morning brought our first real test. A prospective tenant named David Walsh came to look at Unit 2C, a divorced dad looking for a fresh start after his ex-wife got the house. Madison was supposed to show him the apartment while I handled a contractor meeting at the Elm Street property. At 11:30, Patricia called me in a panic. Jake, you need to get back here. Your assistant just rejected a qualified applicant for no valid reason. What do you mean rejected him? She told David Walsh that Unit 2C wasn't the right fit for his situation and suggested he look elsewhere. He had perfect credit, 3 months rent up front, glowing references from his previous landlord. I've never seen anything like it. I found Madison in the parking lot, standing by Walsh's truck as he loaded his paperwork back into his briefcase. Even from 50 feet away, I could see the tension in both their postures. Mr. Walsh, I called out, jogging over. I'm Jake Morrison, the owner. I understand there was some confusion about Unit 2C. Walsh turned to me with obvious frustration. Confusion is putting it mildly. Your assistant here seems to think I'm not suitable for your property. He shot Madison a cold look. Apparently my situation raises red flags she's not comfortable ignoring. I looked at Madison, who was staring at the ground like she wanted to disappear into the asphalt. What red flags? Well, Walsh said, pulling out his phone, according to her, recently divorced men are statistically more likely to engage in domestic disturbances, and my having weekend custody of my 8-year-old daughter creates noise concerns for other tenants. My stomach dropped. Madison had profiled this man based on pure prejudice, the same way she profiled me as a permanent criminal. Mr. Walsh, I sincerely apologize. Those comments don't reflect our actual policies in any way. I handed him my business card. If you're still interested, I'd like to personally show you the unit and discuss the lease terms. Walsh studied my face for a moment. You know what? I think I'll take my business elsewhere. If this is how your staff treats people going through difficult times, I don't want to be your tenant. He drove away, leaving me standing in the parking lot with Madison, who looked like she might throw up. My office, I said quietly. Now. The silence in my office stretched for 2 full minutes before I could trust myself to speak calmly. Explain to me what just happened out there. Madison sat rigid in a chair across from my desk, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. I made an error in judgment. An error in judgment? I leaned back in my chair. Madison, you just cost me a qualified tenant and potentially opened us up to a discrimination lawsuit. David Walsh could claim we rejected him based on his marital status and parental situation. I was trying to protect the property. You were doing exactly what you did to me for 5 years. You took one piece of information about someone's circumstances and used it to decide they were unworthy. I pulled up Walsh's application on my computer screen. This man has an 800 credit score, makes $60,000 a year as an electrician, and his previous landlord said he was the best tenant they'd had in 20 years. But you saw divorced father and decided he was trouble. Madison's composure finally cracked. His ex-wife called him 3 times during the showing. 3 times. She was screaming so loud I could hear her through his phone. Then he told me she's been difficult about custody arrangements and might show up unannounced sometimes. I paused, studying her face. There was genuine fear there, not just prejudice. Madison, what aren't you telling me? She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. Richard's ex-girlfriend has been stalking me since our separation became public. She shows up at places I go, sends emails to my former coworkers claiming I broke up their relationship. Last week she followed me to the grocery store and screamed at me in the parking lot about how I stole him from her. This was the first I'd heard about Richard having baggage. Why didn't you mention this before? Because it makes me sound paranoid and unstable. Because I was afraid if you knew how messy my life really is, you'd decide I'm more trouble than I'm worth. She looked up at me with exhausted eyes. When I heard David Walsh's ex-wife yelling and saw how tense he got, all I could think about was drama and police calls and other tenants complaining about noise. I panicked. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache building. Madison's personal life was apparently even more complicated than I'd realized. Have you filed a restraining order against this woman? I tried. The police said her behavior is annoying but not threatening, and I need more evidence of actual harassment. Madison laughed bitterly. Apparently following someone and yelling at them in public places doesn't count as stalking in this state. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia, *Jake, David Walsh just called back. Says he's reconsidering if you can guarantee his assistant won't be involved in any future interactions. Wants to speak with you directly about the lease, *. I showed Madison the message. Walsh is giving us another chance, but only if you stay away from him completely. Her face flushed with shame. I understand. Do you? Because this is exactly the kind of second-guessing I can't afford in this business. You projected your own problems onto a stranger and nearly cost us both money and reputation. I stood up and walked to the window. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call David Walsh personally and apologize for your inappropriate comments. Then you're going to write a formal letter of apology for his file, acknowledging that your behavior was discriminatory and unprofessional. Jake. I'm not finished. You're also going to research fair housing laws and write me a 2-page summary of what constitutes illegal discrimination in tenant screening. Consider it homework. I turned back to face her. And if Richard's ex becomes a problem for this business in any way, you'll resign immediately. I won't let your personal drama affect my other tenants' safety. Madison nodded miserably. I really am sorry. I know I messed up. Being sorry isn't enough anymore, Madison. You need to start making better choices, not just explaining away the bad ones. As she gathered her things to leave, my phone rang. Patricia again. Jake, we've got another situation. Someone's been calling our tenants directly, asking questions about Madison Chen. Says he's conducting a background check for potential employers. I looked at Madison, who had gone completely pale. What's the caller's name? Richard Chen. Says he's her husband. The plot just kept thickening. Madison's face went from pale to gray when I said Richard's name. She sank back into the chair like her legs had given out. He's calling the tenants. Her voice was barely a whisper. Why would he? What could he possibly gain from that? I put Patricia on speaker. What exactly is he asking them? Mostly questions about Madison's behavior, whether she seems stable, if she's had any episodes or conflicts with other residents. Mrs. Rodriguez said he asked if Madison had been drinking heavily or bringing strange men around. Patricia's voice was tight with concern. Jake, this feels like harassment. Several tenants are uncomfortable and want to know if they should be worried about their safety. Madison buried her face in her hands. Oh God. He's trying to build a case that I'm unstable. His lawyer probably told him to gather evidence for the divorce proceedings. What divorce proceedings? I asked sharply. You said you were separated. Richard filed last week. He's claiming irreconcilable differences, but his lawyer hinted they might pursue a fault-based divorce if I don't agree to his financial terms. She looked up at me with desperate eyes. He wants to keep the house, both cars, and our joint investment accounts. Says I can have my clothes and personal items. And if you don't agree? Then he'll claim I'm mentally unstable due to financial stress and alcohol abuse. Apparently my erratic behavior and inability to maintain employment make me unfit for any significant marital assets. Patricia's voice cut through the speaker. Jake, there's more. Richard Chen also called asking for Madison's employment records. Wanted to know her exact salary, work schedule, and whether we've had any performance issues. I felt anger building in my chest, not at Madison this time, but at her husband who was systematically trying to destroy her credibility while she was already drowning. Patricia, from now on, all inquiries about any employee go directly to me. Don't give out any information to anyone, including spouses. Already on it. But Jake, you should know, he seemed to know a lot about our business. Mentioned you by name, said something about how interesting it was that Madison ended up working for her stepbrother's company. Madison's head snapped up. He knows about us being related? Apparently so. And he seemed very curious about the timing of your employment here. The implications hit me immediately. Richard could spin this whole arrangement as nepotism or worse, claim that Madison and I had some inappropriate relationship that explained why I'd hired her despite her instability. In a divorce proceeding, that kind of insinuation could be devastating. Patricia, I need you to document every call Richard Chen makes to our office. Date, time, exactly what he asked for, and your responses. If this escalates, we might need legal documentation of harassment. After I hung up, Madison was staring at the floor like she was trying to solve a puzzle. I don't understand how Richard even found out I was working here. I haven't told anyone in the family yet. You said to wait until Thanksgiving to make the announcement. Who else knows about our arrangement? Just you, me, and Patricia. Unless. Her eyes widened. The unemployment office. When I called to update my job status, they asked for employer information. Richard might have access to that if we're still legally married. My phone buzzed with another text, this one from my cousin Rebecca, * Jake, heard through the grapevine that Madison's working for you now. Dad mentioned Richard called him asking weird questions about your business. Everything okay? *. Shit. I showed Madison the message. Richard's calling extended family members now. This is escalating fast. Madison stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. I have to quit. This is exactly what you were worried about, my personal problems affecting your business. Richard's going to keep stirring up drama until... Sit down, Madison. But he's going to ruin your reputation by association. He'll make it sound like you're somehow complicit in... I said sit down. My voice was sharp enough that she obeyed immediately. Running away is what got you into this mess in the first place. You spent 5 years avoiding uncomfortable truths, and look where it landed you. This is different. This is Richard actively trying to destroy both of us. Then we deal with Richard. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my contacts. I know 3 divorce attorneys and a private investigator who specializes in asset hiding. Richard wants to play games. We'll show him what games look like. Madison stared at me like I'd sprouted a second head. You'd help me fight him? After everything I've put you through? I'd help you grow a spine, I corrected. There's a difference. But first, I need to know, is there anything else about your marriage, your separation, or Richard's behavior that you haven't told me? Because I can't protect this business from surprises I don't see coming. She was quiet for a long moment, and I could practically see her internal debate playing out across her face. Finally, she spoke. Richard's been hiding money in cryptocurrency accounts for months. I have screenshots. Now we were getting somewhere. The screenshots Madison showed me painted a picture of systematic financial deception that made my own criminal past look like shoplifting candy. Richard had been siphoning money from their joint accounts for 8 months, converting it to various cryptocurrencies through accounts registered under his brother's name. $73,000, Madison said, pointing to a transaction from September. He told me it was a bonus payment to his 401k. I found out by accident when I used his laptop to check our bank balance and his crypto wallet was still logged in. I studied the images on her phone. The transactions were methodical, never more than $3,000 at a time to avoid triggering bank reporting requirements, always on days when Madison was traveling for work or busy with family obligations. Why didn't you confront him immediately? Because I was terrified he'd deny it and make me look paranoid. Richard's always been smarter than me with financial stuff. He does our taxes, manages our investments, handles all the banking. I was afraid he'd have some explanation that would make me feel stupid for questioning him. My phone rang before I could respond. Patricia's number. Jake, Richard Chen is here. In person. Says he needs to speak with you about Madison's employment situation. I looked at Madison, whose face had gone completely white. He's here. Now. Apparently so. And he's not alone, there's another man with him who introduced himself as Richard's attorney. Madison grabbed my arm. Jake, please. Don't let him in here. If he sees those screenshots on my phone. Relax. He has no legal right to see your personal property. I stood up and straightened my tie. But this actually works in our favor. Let him make his threats in front of witnesses with Patricia documenting everything. You don't understand. Richard's incredibly persuasive when he wants to be. He'll make you believe I'm unstable and dangerous, Anne. Madison. I put my hands on her shoulders, forcing her to look at me. 5 years ago, you made the mistake of deciding who I was without giving me a chance to prove otherwise. Don't make the same mistake about yourself now. I walked to the door, then turned back. Stay here. Don't come out no matter what you hear unless I specifically call for you. And hide those screenshots, email them to yourself from a personal account right now. Patricia was waiting in the lobby with two men who couldn't have looked more different. Richard was tall and lean, wearing an expensive suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His lawyer was shorter and stockier, with the kind of aggressive posture that screamed small dog syndrome. Mr. Morrison. Richard extended his hand with a practiced smile. Richard Chen. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. I didn't take his hand. Mr. Chen. I understand you have concerns about your wife's employment here. Estranged wife, the lawyer corrected immediately. Mr. Chen filed for divorce last week due to Mrs. Chen's increasingly erratic behavior and financial irresponsibility. And that affects her employment how exactly? Richard's smile faltered slightly. Mr. Morrison, I'll be direct. Madison is going through a severe mental health crisis. She lost her job due to performance issues, she's been drinking heavily, and frankly, I'm concerned about her ability to handle responsibility in her current state. Do you have documentation of these performance issues? The lawyer stepped forward. TechFlow Solutions cited attendance problems and missed deadlines in their termination paperwork. Mrs. Chen was also involved in an altercation with a coworker just days before her firing. This was news to me. I kept my expression neutral. And you're sharing this information because? Because, Richard said, his voice taking on a concerned tone that sounded rehearsed, Madison has always struggled with rejection and failure. When things don't go her way, she tends to lash out at the people closest to her. I'm worried about the safety of your other tenants, frankly. Mr. Chen, are you threatening to file some kind of complaint against my employee? Not threatening, no. But I do think you should be aware that Madison has been making some very serious accusations against me lately. Claims about financial impropriety that are completely unfounded. Richard's eyes narrowed slightly. The kind of accusations that could damage a person's reputation if they're not careful about enabling her delusions. The threat was subtle but clear, back off, or Madison's accusations about the hidden cryptocurrency would suddenly become public in a way that implicated me as well. Gentlemen, I said, pulling out my phone and hitting record, I'm going to need you to leave my property immediately. Any future communications regarding my employee should go through my attorney. Richard's mask finally slipped, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. Mr. Morrison, I don't think you fully understand the situation you're inserting yourself into. Actually, I think I understand it perfectly. That's when Madison's voice cut through the lobby from behind me. Hello, Richard. I turned to see Madison standing in the doorway of my office, still holding her phone but looking steadier than she had all week. The terrified woman from 5 minutes ago had been replaced by someone who looked almost calm. Madison, Richard said, his practiced smile snapping back into place. You look well. I was just explaining to Mr. Morrison that you've been under a lot of stress lately. Were you? Madison stepped into the lobby, and I noticed she was recording on her phone too. What kind of stress, specifically? Richard's lawyer shot him a warning look, but Richard was already committed to his performance. Financial stress, mostly. The job loss hit you pretty hard, and I know you've been struggling to find your footing. Interesting. Madison's voice was eerily steady. Tell me, Richard, how exactly would you know about my current financial situation? We've been separated for 3 weeks. Well, we're still married. Legally, I have certain what? Rights to call my employer's tenants and interrogate them about my behavior. Madison held up her phone, showing a call log. Mrs. Rodriguez was kind enough to record your conversation yesterday. Would you like to hear the part where you asked if I'd been entertaining male visitors, or should we skip to where you suggested she document any suspicious activity for potential legal proceedings? Richard's face flushed, but his lawyer jumped in smoothly. Mrs. Chen, your husband has legitimate concerns about your well-being, Anne. My well-being? Madison laughed, and there was something sharp in it that I'd never heard before. Is that what we're calling it when someone moves $73,000 into cryptocurrency accounts without their spouse's knowledge? The lobby went dead silent. Richard's lawyer actually took a step back. That's a very serious accusation, the lawyer said carefully. Do you have any proof of these alleged transactions? Madison looked directly at Richard, whose face had gone pale beneath his expensive tan. $73,416. Transferred over 8 months through accounts registered to your brother Marcus. Would you like me to read the wallet addresses out loud, or should we discuss this privately? Madison, you're clearly having some kind of episode. Bitcoin wallet 1A1ZP1EP5QJFE2DMPTFTL5SLMB7 DIFNA, last transaction October 15th for $2,847. Ethereum wallet 0x742D35CC6634C05329255A3B8D4D8, last transaction October 18th for $3,200. Madison's voice never wavered. I can keep going. I have screenshots of everything. Richard's lawyer grabbed his client's arm. We need to leave. Now. But Richard was staring at Madison like he was seeing her for the first time. How did I figure it out? Because you got sloppy, Richard. You left your crypto exchange logged in on our shared laptop on September 23rd. I've been documenting every transaction since then. Madison stepped closer to him, and I could see her hands were shaking slightly, but her voice remained steady. Did you really think I was too stupid to understand what you were doing? Madison, if you try to make those allegations public, I'll destroy you in court. Your employment history, your drinking, your family's criminal connections. My family's criminal connections. Madison's laugh was bitter. You mean my stepbrother who built a successful business after serving his time? The same stepbrother who offered me a job when my husband abandoned me with $237 in my bank account. Richard shot me a venomous look. Very convenient timing for that job offer, wasn't it? That was apparently my cue to step back into the conversation. Mr. Chen, you and your attorney need to leave immediately. Any further harassment of my tenants or employees will result in a restraining order. Richard's lawyer was already pulling him toward the door, but Richard turned back one last time. Madison, you have no idea what you're starting. I have resources you can't even imagine. Madison waited until they were completely gone before her composure finally cracked. But instead of collapsing like I expected, she turned to me with something that looked almost like relief. Well, she said, sinking into Patricia's desk chair. I guess we're both all in now. The aftermath of Richard's visit left the office feeling like a crime scene. Patricia was frantically typing notes about everything she'd witnessed, Madison was staring at her phone like it might explode, and I was trying to process the fact that my stepsister had just gone nuclear on her soon-to-be ex-husband in my lobby. Madison, I said carefully, we need to talk about what just happened. I know. I'm sorry. I should have stayed in your office like you said, but when I heard him threatening you because of me, she looked up with eyes that were fierce instead of defeated for the first time since this whole mess started. I couldn't let him drag you down with his lies. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, asterisk this isn't over. You have no idea who you're protecting. R asterisk. I showed it to Madison, whose jaw tightened. He's going to escalate. Richard doesn't handle public humiliation well. How bad is this going to get? Before Madison could answer, Patricia's phone started ringing. Morrison Property Management, she answered professionally, then her face went pale. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? She put the caller on hold and looked at me with wide eyes. Jake, that was Channel 7 News. They received an anonymous tip about a domestic situation involving financial fraud and workplace harassment at our Maple Grove location. They want to send a reporter out this afternoon. Madison's face went white. He called the media. Richard actually called the news. Gets worse, Patricia continued. They mentioned having documentation of concerning employee practices and want to speak with you about hiring family members who may be involved in criminal activity. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Richard wasn't just trying to destroy Madison in their divorce, he was trying to take down my business as collateral damage. Paint me as the ex-con who couldn't be trusted with legitimate business dealings, Madison as the unstable family member I'd inexplicably enabled. Son of a bitch, I muttered, already pulling up my attorney's contact. He's trying to turn this into a public scandal. Madison stood abruptly. I'm calling my dad. If this hits the news, the family needs to hear the truth from us first. Madison, wait. But she was already dialing. I watched her pace to the window as the phone rang. Dad? It's Madison. I need to tell you something, and it's going to sound crazy. Her voice was steadier than I expected. Richard and I are getting divorced, and he's been stealing money from our accounts for months. Also, Jake hired me to work at his property management company after I lost my job, and now Richard's trying to destroy both of us by calling reporters. Even from across the room, I could hear my stepfather's shocked voice through the phone. No, Dad, I'm not having a breakdown. Yes, I know how it sounds. Can you call Jake and let him explain? Richard's lawyer was just here making threats, and now there are news people asking questions about criminal activity. She hung up and turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. He wants to talk to you. Says he's coming over here right now with Carol. Great. So in the span of 2 hours, I've gone from secretly helping my estranged stepsister to having her divorce drama become a potential media circus involving my parents. My attorney picked up on the second ring. Jake. What's the emergency? David, I need you to drop everything and get to my Maple Grove office. We've got a situation involving employee harassment, potential media attention, and financial fraud allegations that could blow back on the business. How bad are we talking? I looked at Madison, who was now frantically texting someone, probably more family damage control. Bad enough that I might need crisis management consultation too. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't talk to any reporters until I arrive. As I hung up, Patricia called out from her desk, Jake, 2 more things. That Channel 7 reporter just pulled into the parking lot. And David Walsh, the tenant Madison rejected yesterday. He just called back saying he saw news vans outside and wants to know if this property is safe for his daughter. Madison sank into a chair, the brief fire from her confrontation with Richard finally extinguished by the reality of consequences. I've destroyed everything, haven't I? Your business, our family's reputation, even that poor man's housing search. Through the window, I could see a young woman with perfectly styled hair setting up a camera near our building sign. My phone was buzzing with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Maybe, I said, watching my carefully built life potentially crumble in real time. But if we're going down, we're taking Richard with us. The real war was just beginning. 3 months later, I stood in my expanded office overlooking the Maple Grove complex, watching Madison train our newest property manager. The news crews were long gone, Richard's divorce attorney had been disbarred for ethics violations, and my business had actually grown thanks to the unexpected publicity. Turned out, the story of an ex-con helping his judgmental stepsister while exposing her husband's financial crimes played a lot better with the public than Richard had anticipated. Jake. Madison knocked on my door frame. Mrs. Rodriguez in 4A wants to thank you again for the security upgrades. And David Walsh signed his lease renewal, says his daughter loves it here. Good. How are the interviews going for the assistant manager position? 3 strong candidates. Patricia thinks we should hire all of them with how fast we're expanding. Madison paused in the doorway. Jake, there's something else. The divorce settlement came through this morning. I looked up from my computer. And Richard's paying me $437,000. Turns out hiding cryptocurrency during divorce proceedings is considered fraud, and Judge Martinez wasn't impressed with his investment strategy. Madison smiled, a real smile, not the practiced one from her corporate days. I want to invest it. In what? Your business. As a silent partner. She held up a folder. I've been watching how you operate for 3 months now. You're not just running apartment complexes, you're building communities. Helping people who need second chances, like you helped me. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. 3 months of cleaning gutters and handling tenant complaints had changed Madison in ways I hadn't expected. The sharp edges were still there, but they'd been tempered with something that looked like genuine humility. Why would you want to invest in working with an ex-con? Madison stepped into my office and closed the door. Because that ex-con taught me the difference between earning respect and demanding it. Because he showed me mercy when I deserved judgment. She set the folder on my desk. And because tomorrow's Thanksgiving dinner, and I have a speech to give. I'd forgotten about her promise to tell the family the truth at the next gathering. You nervous? Terrified. But you know what's funny? For the first time in my life, I'm not worried about what people will think of me. I'm more worried about doing right by the people who matter. She looked out the window at the complex where families were coming home from work, kids playing in the courtyard. This place, this work, it matters. You're giving people safe homes and fresh starts. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad, *, Jake, bringing extra chairs tomorrow. Madison told us she's bringing a guest, someone named Patricia who's become a good friend. Can't wait to hear all your business success stories. Proud of you, son, *. Patricia's coming to dinner. I asked. Madison grinned. She doesn't have family in town, and she's been covering for me every time I had a breakdown these past few months. Figured it was time she met the chaos that made me who I am. I opened her folder and scanned the investment proposal. It was thorough, professional, and fair, giving her a stake in future growth while leaving me in complete control of operations. There's one condition, I said finally. Name it. Next time someone in our family screws up and needs help, you don't get to vote on whether they deserve it. You just help. Madison nodded solemnly. Deal. Though honestly, Jake, I don't think anyone's going to top our drama for at least a few years. I signed the partnership agreement and handed it back to her. Madison Chen, welcome to Morrison Property Management. Try not to reject any more qualified tenants. She laughed, and I realized it was the first time I'd heard her laugh without an edge of superiority in it. Thanks for the second chance, Jake. Even when I didn't deserve it. Everyone deserves a second chance, I said. Some people just need to hit bottom before they're ready to take it. Tomorrow, Madison would stand up at our family dinner and tell everyone how the ex-con stepbrother she'd written off had saved her from homelessness. How karma had a sense of humor, and sometimes the people you judge the harshest end up being exactly who you need. But tonight, I was content knowing that sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's helping them become better people than they ever thought possible.